My daughter gave me the old cell phone that she found in her mother's room. What I read in the messages destroyed me. There is a moment in a man's life when he thinks he has lived enough not to be surprised by anything anymore. He believes he has seen everything life has to offer. I thought I had gone through everything life could offer me. 28 years of marriage, 2 daughters whom I loved with all my heart, a solid career as a structural engineer building commercial and residential buildings that are still standing in Chicago, changing the skyline of one of the biggest cities in the world. I thought I understood my wife, Jennifer. I thought I knew my family intimately. I thought the foundation I built was solid, firm, immobile, like the foundation of a 50-story building. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to be simply paranoid. If you do not want to know how a man discovers in a single night that his whole life was an elaborately constructed lie, if you do not want to understand how someone can sleep next to someone for almost 3 decades and never really know her, if you do not want to know the price you pay, when you ignore the warning signs, then perhaps you should not continue watching now. But if you want to know what happened when my daughter placed that cell phone in my hand, and the words I read on the illuminated screens left me completely shattered, if you need to understand how I discovered a second parallel life that my wife kept hidden with dedication for more than a decade, if you want to know how I navigated through the greatest betrayal a man can suffer inside his own home, then subscribe to the channel now because this is a video you will want to watch until the end. My name is Robert Harrison, and I am sharing my story because I need other people to understand that not everything that glitters is gold, and not everything that seems absolutely solid really is when you touch it. I spent my entire life applying rigorous structural engineering principles to the things I build, always thinking about adequate foundations, about how to distribute weight correctly to avoid concentration at a single point, about how to ensure that something does not collapse completely under extreme pressure. I spent 28 years building marriages with the same negligence as an amateur. I should have applied the same analytical logic to my marriage that I applied to the buildings I built. But I started building life with Jennifer without ever verifying if she was being honest with me from the first moment, from the first kiss, from the first time she said she loved me. I met Jennifer in a cafe in Denver, Colorado, in May 1995. She was 23 years old, I was 27, and she was literally the most beautiful thing my eyes had ever seen at that point in my life. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office called Bright Smile Dental, serving patients every day with a smile that warmed the entire room. She dreamed of having a career in marketing, of working on creative campaigns, of being involved with the brand image of large companies. We started dating 3 months after the first date, when she finally agreed to go out with me for a movie after I had asked 9 times. We got married 2.5 years later, in December 1997, in a small ceremony with only 50 people in a Methodist church in Denver. She wore a simple white dress that her mother had helped choose. She said she loved me more than anything in this world. She said she wanted to have my daughter. She said she wanted to grow old by my side. I believed every word that came out of her mouth, every promise she whispered at night, every oath she made before God and all those who were watching. In the first 10 years of marriage, everything was relatively normal if you consider it normal to work 60 hours a week while your wife takes care of 2 small children alone. Jennifer had Stephanie in September 1998, and she was born with blonde hair and blue eyes that reminded me of Jennifer. Catherine arrived in March 2001, with dark brown hair and a personality that was a perfect mix of me and my wife. I worked as a senior structural engineer in an office in Denver, earning $100,000 a year, which was good money for 1998. But when an opportunity came in 2000 to transfer to an office in Chicago that was bigger, more aggressive, and where salaries started at $120,000, I jumped at it. Jennifer agreed, although reluctantly, leaving her family in Denver, leaving her friends, leaving everything she knew to accompany me. We moved to Chicago in May 2000 when Stephanie was almost 2 years old and Catherine had not yet been born. Jennifer left her job in Denver. She said it was what she wanted, that being a mother was her true calling in life, that she had always dreamed of raising daughters. I worked 12 hours a day in some periods, especially during big projects when deadlines tightened and expectations were high. I made money, a lot of money. I invested in our house, a 2-story colonial house in a neighborhood called Forest Glen, which cost $320,000 in 2001. I built a retirement plan that would put us in a comfortable position when I stopped working at 55 years old. I was building everything correctly, or so I thought. In 2008, when my business was expanding and I had become a partner in a larger engineering firm, Jennifer began to gradually distance herself from me. Nothing obvious to most people who did not live with us, but for someone who passed his quiet moments with his wife, it was noticeable. She went out more times with friends from the gym. She spent more time on the phone, whispering conversations that ceased when I entered the room. She seemed distracted during dinner, her eyes focused on something I could not see. But when I asked about what she did during the day, she always had a reasonable explanation ready on the tip of her tongue. She was helping a friend with marital problems. She was at a school mothers' meeting about summer enrichment programs. She was watching a movie with the girls in her room while I worked late in the home office. I believed every explanation because I wanted to believe. I was too busy with my work to question deeply, and that was my greatest failure as a husband. In 2010, Jennifer started going to a gym 3 times a week with a consistency that is remarkable when looking back. She said she wanted to stay in shape, that with 40 years approaching she wanted to feel good about herself, that she wanted to see herself in mirrors with approval. I supported her decision completely. I bought exercise equipment for the house, a $2,000 treadmill that cost $5,000 when you add delivery and installation. I offered to pay a private personal trainer to work with her at home. She refused politely but firmly, said she preferred going to the gym, that she needed the change of scenery, that staying at home was making her feel trapped. When she returned from the gym, she was always with friends, always had stories about what they talked about, always said that those 2 hours 3 times a week were important for her mental health and her emotional well-being. What I did not know, what my trusting mind never considered, was that she was not returning alone. What I did not know was that there was a man named Marcus Thornton who was waiting for her in a discreet parking lot near the gym, a man who was not her husband. Time passes for all of us, and it passes for those who are building lies, just as for those who are ignorant of them. 2012 arrived and passed. 2013 came and went. 2014 elapsed like any other year of our fake life. The girls grew and developed. Stephanie entered university in the fall of 2016, attending the University of Illinois and studying business administration as she had planned since high school. Catherine was in her senior year of high school, worried about college applications and the life she would build after secondary education. I continued building structures that shelter thousands of people every day. I continued earning money, accumulating wealth, expanding my investment portfolio. I continued being ignorant of the truth that was happening under my own roof. Jennifer continued saying she loved me. We had sex occasionally, without the passion of when we were younger, but without the pain that must have accompanied her secret encounters. We had occasional dinners at restaurants she chose. We had a life that seemed to work perfectly. We were a couple that seemed happy to the people around us. We were exactly what anyone looking from the outside would have thought to be a perfect family. We were a carefully constructed and maintained lie. In November 2023, the 15th year of her secret relationship with Marcus Thornton, the whole life I built began to crumble. I had become a partner in a major infrastructure project in Phoenix, Arizona, a construction contract of $500 million that would involve the renovation of 5 main overpasses and the construction of a new transport system. I was traveling more frequently than ever in my career. I spent 3 weeks in Phoenix supervising work on the site, returned to Chicago for a week to maintain local operations, and then returned to Phoenix again. It was physically exhausting, but financially rewarding. I was making more money than I had ever imagined was possible to make. Jennifer had stayed mostly in Chicago, supervising the renovation of our master bathroom, which was a project she had wanted to do for over 5 years. Stephanie had returned home after finishing her degree in business administration, working at an office in Chicago. Catherine was still at university, attending Northwestern University, living in the dorm and savoring her new freedom. In the first week of December 2023, Stephanie was cleaning the closet in her mother's room while Jennifer was out at a routine doctor's appointment. She was organizing, donating old things, trying to help put the house in order before Christmas. She found an old cell phone hidden on the highest shelf, behind a pile of wool sweaters that Jennifer had not worn for years. A rusted iPhone 6S from age, with the battery clearly not charged in months. She found it strange why her mother would have hidden an old cell phone so carefully. She called me immediately in Phoenix, describing what she had found, and asked for advice. I was in an important meeting with the mayor of Phoenix about the technical specifications of the new infrastructure project, discussing budgets, schedules, and municipal expectations. I thought quickly. I told Stephanie to put it back where she found it, that it was probably just an old phone her mother had kept for backup purposes. But Stephanie did not do what I suggested. She kept the phone. Stephanie brought the phone to her room that night and tried to turn it on with the hope that it still had a little battery. Against the odds, the battery had enough charge. The phone turned on. When the screen lit up, revealing wallpapers Jennifer had chosen, she saw notifications. Messages from a number that simply said Marcus. Messages that were not appropriate between a wife and a stranger. Messages that were so clearly of a romantic and sexual nature that Stephanie knew immediately, in that moment, that she had found something that would change our family forever. She read a little more, just the headers of the messages. Then she read more deeply, following the conversation. Then she read all the messages she could find, going back in time, seeing years of documented lies. 23 years of age. Her heart raced uncontrollably. Her hands began to tremble while she read about her mother's double life. She called me again, her voice in panic on the phone. I was in an important meeting with consultants when my phone rang. I left discreetly. Stephanie was in clear panic. She said she had found Mom's phone and that she had explored its content. She said she had read the entire messages. She began to cry while she told me what she had read. Marcus Thornton and my wife Jennifer. A relationship that had lasted 15 years. Conversations dating back to 2008. Messages that continued with certain intervals and intensities until 2022, just a year before. 15 years. 15 years of my wife having a complete parallel relationship. 15 years of careful lies, of prepared excuses, of explained absences. I asked Stephanie to keep the phone with me when I returned to Chicago the following week. My entire world, everything I thought was true, was crumbling. I traveled back to Chicago the following Thursday. My mind was a chaotic whirlwind of conflicting emotions and distressing thoughts. Pure and primal anger, deep sadness that penetrated the bones, total confusion. How was this possible? How had I not seen obvious signs? How can a person be so close to another, sharing a bed, sharing a life, and not know of a second life so extensive and well documented? I was building buildings that served tens of thousands of people. I was earning enough money to retire my family comfortably. I was being the husband and father I thought I should be. And the whole time, during 15 years, my wife was building a completely different life with another man. A man she left messages of love for. A man she visited secretly. A man who occupied a space in her heart that I thought was only mine. Stephanie handed me the phone on Friday night in our private bathroom, away from Jennifer's ears. She left so I could be completely alone with the device that contained the proof of her own infidelity. I started reading from the beginning, from the first messages. The first messages dated back to 2008, at the height of my involvement with the Chicago project, when I was working 70 hours a week. Marcus Thornton had been a contractor who worked on a kitchen renovation project in our house. Jennifer met him when I was away for an engineering conference in Toronto. He was 18 years older than her. He was divorced. He was a man my wife chose secretly while sleeping next to me. The first messages were cautious and measured, like two strangers testing the waters. They asked how he was. She asked how he was doing. Gradually, over weeks and months, they became closer, more intimate. Then they became sexually explicit in a way that made me feel sick. Then they became detailed planning of secret meetings, chosen locations, agreed times. The gym was where she said she was, 3 times a week. She was unfaithful. She was a liar. She was a woman who had built a whole life of deceit and dissimulation. I continued reading through the years stored on the phone, 2008, 2009, 2010. The messages continued like a river that never dries up, sometimes spaced with weeks between them, sometimes frequent and passionate, but always present, always documented, always existing. Marcus asked if she still loved me. She said it was complicated, that it was not simple like love or hate. Marcus asked when she would leave me. She said she did not know, that she did not have the courage, that she had responsibilities. She said she had daughters who depended on me, but she kept going to meet him. She kept lying when she returned. She kept living a double life that was as real to her as the life we lived together. In 2012, approximately 4 years into her secret relationship, the messages took a significantly different and more complex turn. Marcus was having serious marital problems with a girlfriend. He was wanting Jennifer to leave the marriage with me permanently. He said he loved her in a way he had never loved anyone. Jennifer responded that she also loved him, that her feelings were real and deep. But something kept her tied to me, to our family, to our life together. She wrote long messages explaining that I was a good man, that I did not deserve what she was doing, that I did not deserve to be betrayed in this systematic way, that she could not break with the girls, that they still needed me, that she could not destroy our family completely. That was the first moment my chest tightened while I read those messages. She knew it was wrong. She knew she was hurting me deeply. She chose to continue anyway. 2013 passed. 2014 arrived. 2015 went into the past. The messages continued, but with a clear pattern emerging from the narrative. They met and spent time together. They separated temporarily when circumstances made contact impossible. Marcus threatened to end the relationship, promising he would focus on his own life. Jennifer begged him to come back, that she needed him, that life without communication with him was empty. Other times it was the reverse, with Jennifer keeping distance and Marcus begging for attention. I continued reading and slowly built a complete picture of a parallel relationship that was as complex as my marriage to her, but full of drama, emotion, passion, and despair that I had never felt in our matrimonial relationship. In 2016, Marcus mentioned casually that he was having a child with a new girlfriend. Jennifer responded that she was happy for him, but also was devastated, her heart broken. She wrote that she wished circumstances were different, that we lived in a world where she could be with him without destroying everything. She wrote that she loved him more than anything. He responded that he also loved her, but that he needed to move on with his life, that he could not live in a shadow anymore. The messages decreased significantly after that. But curiously, they never stopped completely. I continued reading until 2022. The last message was from Jennifer, asking how he was, what it was like being single again, what he was doing with his life now. He never replied to that message, but for 10 years, from 2012 until 2022, from when he started wanting more until this moment in her room, my wife had kept a flame burning for another man, a man who was not me, a man who was everything I was not during those dark years. I placed the phone slowly down on my lap. My hands were shaking involuntarily. I was having difficulty breathing properly, as if my chest were squeezed by something I could not see or touch. Jennifer was downstairs watching television, watching a program that she probably was not really paying attention to. She did not know that I had found out. She did not know that her life was about to change completely in a direction she had not anticipated. I thought about how to confront her. I thought about how to vomit the harsh words I needed to say. I thought about how to destroy the illusion she had built so carefully during 15 years of deceit. My eyes were burning. My heart was racing. I was having a silent panic attack in my own room. But I did nothing that night. That would have been an emotional and impulsive reaction. I grabbed the phone. I put it in my work backpack. And I went out to the garage to think about what to do next. Chicago in December is cold. The thermometer marked 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I was sweating anyway, my body in conflict with my rational mind. I spent the whole Saturday night awake, thinking. I thought about what to do. I thought about how to approach this without exploding completely. I thought about my daughters and how this revelation would affect them fundamentally. I thought about the money we had invested together, about what would be divided in a divorce. I thought about the future, and if there was any way to save my marriage with someone who spent 15 whole years lying to me. Then I decided there wasn't. How do you save a marriage with someone who invested 15 years building a parallel relationship? On Sunday morning, on December 1st, I called Jennifer to talk seriously. We sat in the kitchen in initial silence. I placed the old phone on the table between us. She saw the rusted iPhone 6s device, and her face changed color immediately, paled in a way that confirmed everything I suspected. She knew. In that second, she knew that everything had ended. Immediately she began to cry. Immediately she began to ask for incoherent apologies. Immediately she began with explanations that did not matter anymore because the damage had been done. She said that everything had started as a simple physical attraction. She said Marcus made her feel young again, that he made her feel beautiful in the way I had stopped doing after years together. She said she never wanted to leave our family, that he was just an escape from the monotonous reality of being a mother and wife in a marriage that had become predictable. She said that many times she thought about breaking up with Marcus, that many times she considered telling everything to me, but that she was afraid of losing the girls, that she was afraid of destroying the family we had built. She said she loved him, but that she also loved me. In that kitchen, on that cold Sunday of December, I did not believe any of that. All I heard was a woman who had built a whole life of elaborate lies. All I heard was someone who had chosen her own desire and her own happiness above the integrity of her family. All I heard was pure deception. I asked her to leave the house immediately. She refused, arguing that this was her house too. She was technically right, but I did not want to be near her, did not want to breathe the same air she breathed. I called a divorce lawyer recommended by a colleague. The lawyer, a man named David Patterson, was experienced in cases of infidelity and matrimonial fraud. He informed me that in Illinois, infidelity can affect property division decisions in some cases, especially if there is clear evidence of dissipation of marital assets. I had the exact evidence I needed. I had the messages documenting everything. I had a cell phone with irrefutable proof that my wife had been systematically unfaithful for more than a decade. But there was a complicated problem. We were not just a couple who could divorce and move on easily. We had daughters we loved. Stephanie was 25 years old and was starting her career. Catherine was 22 and was still at university. They needed their parents functioning in a civil way. They needed stability during such a big and traumatic transition. How would I communicate to them that their mother had fundamentally destroyed our family through prolonged infidelity? I called Stephanie the following Monday, requesting that she come home after work. She arrived around 6 in the evening, bringing the tiredness of the workday on her face. I was waiting for her in the office. I showed her that I had the phone safe in my possession, without risking that Jennifer could find it. I thanked her sincerely for having had the courage to tell me the truth, for not having ignored what she had found. But I also told her that I would need her emotional and possibly practical support while I navigated through what would come next. Stephanie was an adult woman now, with work responsibilities, with her own life being built. She understood immediately the gravity of the situation we had on our hands. She also became furious with her mother, an anger that was appropriate and valid. We talked for 2 hours that night. The situation with Catherine was significantly more complicated and delicate. She was 22 years old, but was still a university student living in the dorm, away from home, enjoying the freedom that the university offered. I called her and asked her to come home the following weekend. When she arrived, I organized for Stephanie to also be present. We sat in the living room and I revealed carefully what I had discovered, explaining honestly but not being gratuitously cruel. Catherine cried. She said she could not believe her mother would have done this, but she also said she loved her mother and hoped we could work through this. I wanted to work through this, but I discovered that I really couldn't. My heart had been broken in a way that could not be repaired. I wanted to move forward with my life. I wanted Jennifer to leave the house. I wanted to start the divorce and reclaim my life. It had been 4 years since my retirement, waiting to travel, waiting to enjoy the money I earned through decades of hard work, waiting to be happy. I did not want to waste more time with someone who betrayed me for 15 years. David Patterson, my lawyer, was aggressive. He discovered that Jennifer had spent significantly on fitness throughout the years, amounts much larger than a normal gym would cost. We discovered regular transfers to a bank account that was not in our agreement. These transfers dated back to 2008, coinciding with the beginning of her relationship with Marcus. Jennifer had been saving money for her parallel life. She had planned everything meticulously. When we confronted Jennifer, she admitted everything. She said she had opened a secret bank account in 2008 because she wanted to have a way to escape if necessary. She had saved approximately $120,000 throughout 15 years through small regular transfers. $120,000 of the money my work had generated. $120,000 she had drained from our family income to fund her life with another man. David explained that this was dissipation of marital assets. During the divorce, this would affect how assets would be divided. Normally, after 30 years of marriage, Jennifer would have been entitled to a significant portion of our assets. But the documented infidelity and the clear dissipation of assets meant that this would not be so generous. David was confident that we could protect most of my money, my retirement, my investments. In the next 6 months, the divorce was an emotional hell. Jennifer hired her own lawyer, a man named Richard Torres. She argued that she had sacrificed her career to raise our daughters. She argued that she deserved significant alimony and a generous division of assets. She argued that her infidelity should not affect the finances of the divorce. Her lawyer knew Illinois laws well, arguing that infidelity was becoming less relevant in modern cases. But I had something she didn't have. I had the messages. I had the documented proofs of asset dissipation. I had meticulous documentation of all bank transfers. The court saw the evidence and agreed fundamentally with me. In the final terms of the divorce in June 2024, Jennifer would receive a modest alimony of $2,000 per month for exactly 10 years. She would receive no additional participation in my retirement beyond what had already been contributed during the first 20 years of marriage. My real estate investments would remain entirely mine. My accumulated assets would remain mine. Jennifer left our house in June 2024. She moved to an apartment in a less desirable neighborhood of Chicago. Stephanie supported completely my decision to proceed with the divorce. Catherine took a significantly longer time to process the new reality, but eventually understood that her mother had crossed a moral line that could not be undone. My marriage of 28 years had ended with the revelation of a truth that had been hidden the whole time. I was never the same man I was before reading those messages in December, but I realized something important during this whole process. The thing that destroyed me was not exactly Jennifer's physical infidelity. It was the fact that I built a whole life without ever really asking difficult questions, without ever demanding complete honesty. I assumed I knew my wife intimately. I assumed our family was solid. I assumed everything was fine because she said it was fine. I should have seen the signs. I should have asked more questions. I should have built my marriage with the same care I built the buildings. Now, at 58 years old, I am starting the third act of my life. I sold the colonial house in Chicago where we lived for 30 years. I bought a remote property in Montana, a 100-acre plot with a small cabin where I can be alone. No marriage, no complicated family, no hidden betrayal. Just me, the natural silence of the forest, and the opportunity to finally understand who I am when I am not being someone for someone else. Stephanie and Catherine understand completely my decision. They visit me occasionally on weekends. We built a new relationship based on real honesty instead of illusion. The last thing I want to say is that cell phone that Stephanie found hidden in her mother's room destroyed me completely, but it also freed me in a way I did not expect. Because sometimes, the things that destroy us are exactly the things we need to rebuild ourselves as better, more honest, and wiser people. I do not thank Jennifer for what she did, for the lies she kept, for the years she stole from my life, but I thank her for finally having seen the truth, because living a lie during 15 years was worse than any harsh reality I could face in a divorce.